Hey, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or if you're watching this on our rapidly growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Brandon P. Joining me tonight from Purcell Pavilion in South Bend, Indiana, is our very own publisher, Mr. Andrew Jones. And AJ, North Carolina just finished getting a 63-59 win. Tar Heels were paced by 16 points apiece by Armando Bacot and Caleb Love. But AJ, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the game in general. The first half, the Tar Heels got off to a pretty ugly start. I believe they only scored 21 points in the first half, but the second half they came out kicking poised on all cylinders, scoring. They had 44 points in the half after halftime. So obviously something was said at halftime. They got the Tar
Oh, yeah.
Heels elevated. AJ, so can you speak on that?
Well, the players that we talked to, there were three of us here in the media, covers North Carolina, and we talked to Pete Nance, Armando, Caleb, and RJ, kind of the usual four that we get now. And all of them talked about halftime. And they described it in interesting ways. And they all said it was heated and passionate, and that they were challenged by Brad Frederick, assistant coach, and Eric Hoots, who's sort of the personnel director of the program. They were asking them how much they care. How much do you care? Where's your want? Do you care? And it was described as being so heated. I actually half jokingly asked Pete and RJ, I said, did you think maybe you were going to hear Hubert's first cuss word ever? Because Hubert was passionate. And they both said, well, if there was ever a time Hubert was ever going to cuss in his life, it would have been at halftime tonight, because they were pathetic in the first half. They were terrible. Yeah. They was their lowest shooting first half since 19, or one of the two or three lowest shooting first half since 1980. Steve Kirshner told us he's going to narrow that down and send us some notes. They were 0 for 11 from three with 0 assists in the first half and 8 turnovers. They shot 5 for 27 from the floor. Their defense was horrible. Their switches didn't work. To be honest with you, they were switching at times where the three of us were sitting together up on press row, which is sort of like a press box here. It's a great view. And we're like, they don't need to switch these. They're just switching because they switch. And suddenly you've got a big on a guard, and the guard's going to drive, or you've got a guard on a big. And to be perfectly honest with you, Notre Dame did a poor job recognizing a lot of the mismatches that they were able to get because of Carolina's switches, and didn't capitalize on it. Notre Dame was up 8 at halftime, should have been up 15-18. And they should have taken advantage of it early in the second half, and they didn't. And Carolina started getting better. I really believe that steal that RJ had for the bucket, Caleb had, or Leaky had a steal that led to a Caleb three. That bang bang right there gave them so much life, and suddenly you could see, like, if Vitality itself had a color, let's say Vitality, the color is orange, right? Yeah. And all the players out on the court had no orange on them, and when that sequence happened, which was in the first couple of minutes of the half, and the way that they were played, they went right to Armando on the first possession of the second half. A minute and a half, 2 minutes into the second half, they would have each been filled with orange. They would have looked orange out there instead of Carolina blue, because they had no vitality in the first half, and they were loaded with it in the second half, and it showed on both ends of the floor. I talked to Caleb about their switches, and he said they communicated much better in the second half, especially the last 12 minutes or so of the second half. They were sharper and crisper. I asked Hubert about that. He doesn't always agree with the premise of questions, but he agreed with that as well, and said it was all byproduct of what they talked about at halftime. In the first half, there's no movement on offense. I tweeted twice, no movement. They're just standing around. And they're looking to throw the entry into Armando. And Notre Dame was bringing the double before the entry the pass was even made. They knew what they're doing. Everybody's telling, all these different teams are telling the media that played North Carolina, like, oh, we know what they're doing. They were bringing Goodwin with the double a couple of times. Literally, once the ball got to the wing, Goodwin's the outside defensively, and he's bringing the double because they know they're going to toss it into Armando. And then everyone's standing around. There's no movement. In the second half, there wasn't always great movement, but there was more movement. There was more pushing. The ball, so often in the first half, someone would get the ball, and the first thing they did was pound it on the floor. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they pick up their dribble. In the second half, they were getting rid of the ball. They were moving it quicker. The bodies were moving quicker. And but as a result of all that vitality, they crashed the boards a lot more in the second half, which was a big part of their offense. after halftime, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So the halftime speech was paint off the wall stuff. I think it was at a different level than some of the halftime speeches we've talked about this year, and there have been quite a few.
Yeah.
But this one was different. Their lowest point total in a half all season was 25. They had 25 at halftime against Wake, and they had 25 in the second half at Duke. They had 19 in it. I mean, it was going so poorly that the DeMarco Dunn bucket at the buzzer, the refs looked at it for like 5 minutes, and here it is halftime, and there's halftime routine stuff going on, and then they announced, oh, the basket's not good, and your halftime score. And there was literally like 12 minutes left on the halftime clock, and they're finally telling us the halftime score. That's how poorly it went for the Tar Heels in the first half, but they flipped a lot of that in the second half.
When it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah. By the way, eight assists and 1 turnover in the second half as well. Hubert really emphasized that. He says the word proud a lot, and I'm not saying he doesn't always mean it, but he was definitely proud of that, and he should have been, because everything that they did with respect to playing off of that energy, care, and want in the second half led them to positive basketball things. Now, here it is, February 22nd. They need to carry that to February 25th, which is their next game.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like you said earlier, another positive basketball thing that happened tonight was the Tar Heels on the board. The Tar Heels absolutely dominated the glass tonight. Every starting Tar Heel had at least 5 rebounds tonight, with Caleb Love at the lowest with 5, and you had 3 Tar Heels with double-figure rebounds. They had 23 offensive rebounds for 23 second chance points. So, AJ, can you just talk about how the Tar Heels dominating on the glass impacted the game tonight?
They looked like North Carolina on the offensive glass. They had 18 offensive boards the other day. They missed a ton of shots, but they didn't get a lot of production. You and I have talked a lot, and Jacob and I have talked a lot after games this year, where they don't even average a point per offensive rebound a lot. They're not getting a lot of production off of it. But they did today. They got 23 second chance points off 23 boards. But what was key was they had 3 straight possessions, this basket right here in the second half, in which they scored off of offensive rebounds. It was inside the 5-minute mark. I mean, quite frankly, that was the difference in the game. Because I've seen so many great Carolina teams that are amazing on the boards just take the life out of an opponent by getting the offensive rebounds and missing. And there were a couple, the one time I think they had 4 shots at the basket, and they kept getting it. Leakey's getting offensive boards, and Armando and Pete Nance, who, by the way, played really well early in the game. If it wasn't for him in the first half, they would have been blown out of the building in the first half. So Pete also had 5 assists on the night. So kudos to him as a quick little sidebar. But they were phenomenal. They went after the glass. I asked Hubert, I said, is that as aggressive as you guys have gone after the offensive glass all season? He didn't say yes, but I got the impression that there was sort of a nod that, yeah, that probably was. I think the second half was a total byproduct of the speech at halftime. And the fact that it came from some people at halftime that don't normally get in there and light him up. And RJ had said a few things, and they took it. And it's interesting talking to them out in the hallway right outside the locker room, where when you mention offensive rebounding, they lit up. And I even said to Armando, I said, this has been the program's been about. This is North Carolina basketball. Is the fast break, the secondary break, the highlight dunk guys like Vinsanity and MJ, but offensive rebounding. That's North Carolina basketball as much as anything else is. And while they didn't look like Carolina in a lot of areas tonight, in the second half, they were dominant on the offensive glass. They got production off the offensive glass. And on a night where they had the lowest shooting percentage of the season, 33.3%, and they were 2 for 21 from 3, and they had only 8 assists on the night, the offensive rebounding is what delivered them to the winner's circle.
Yeah, for sure. And when you have those type of shooting numbers, rebounding and toughness is the only way you're going to win the game. And I think they showed both of that today. Because so in the second half, earlier in the season, we're talking about how Carolina, when they get up, they have a chance to kind of get away, and then they don't. They let the other teams like stick around, and they end up losing the game. But today, with 49 seconds left, RJ Davis hits the tough turnaround jumper in the lane. And can you just talk about how the toughness of this group, and like what could this game possibly mean for the Tar Heels coming up in the future? That's my question.
Yeah, I think there were 2 seconds left on the shot clock, and there were no options, so he had to do that. And one of the things he does well, and he did it that time, was he takes his defender in the lane, and they don't know if he's going to go to the rim or not. and he's really good at stopping and getting that little jumper in the lane, and the defender is still reacting when he releases the ball. That's what happened to him there. I think Ryan was defending him on that play, and he got him or sort of out of his shoes. Caleb Love, 4 free throws in the last 6 seconds. They were both 1-on-1 situations. He's been excellent at hitting free throws in those situations in his career, and he came through tonight. 5:56 left in the game. Carolina's down 52-51. They outscored Notre Dame 12-7 to close it out. So they did that. They did. I wouldn't say they put their foot on the throat, but they closed it out and got a W. Yeah. And I asked 2 players, and I asked Caleb as well about, this time of year, you just need to win, especially you guys.
Yeah.
It don't really matter how you play. You just get a win and keep winning, right? And he said, well, it doesn't matter how you play, but yeah, we had to get a win. And the guys were really happy after the game. I mean, they had some skip in their step when talking to us, and the answers were longer than they were on Sunday, obviously. I think these guys needed this big time because it looked like a loss for the entire first half.
Yeah,
and it looked like a loss for much of the second half because they had that little push, and then Notre Dame retook the lead, and then you're watching the game play out, and you're like, especially when Leakey was on the ball with 30.3 seconds left when they come out of a timeout. Hubert puts him on the ball, which I thought was a good decision because you have your 2 perimeter shooters, RJ and Caleb, coming off screens. That means Notre Dame had to defend everybody that was on the floor instead of laying off Leakey and doubling somewhere. But the problem is they still didn't have great movement there, and Leakey ended up throwing up that air ball, but they were fortunate. It went out off a Notre Dame player, and then it went out again when they had the inbound that Leakey didn't convert at the rim. So they had a little bit of fortune there, but they made them pay for it eventually. So they found a way to win. They found a way to win on the road. They have 3 road wins, I guess, in the league now, which is not great, but it's one more than they had. Yeah. They now have 17 wins on the season. So by winning this game, it made the Virginia game very important. Of course, Virginia screwed Carolina tonight by losing to BC because that's going to hurt them significantly in the NET. They were 16. And the reason this is important is because if Carolina beats Virginia Saturday, you want Virginia leaving Chapel Hill still as a Q1 game. And losing to BC isn't going to help, and losing 2 in a row isn't going to help. That's why I keep saying, or there's some people don't want to hear this, you got to root for Duke to win because they come to Chapel Hill in a week and a half. You want them to be a Q1 game after they leave if Carolina beats them. That's what's important. It's not their NET when they come in. It's what's it going to be after Carolina beats them. So I think that Saturday is enormous for this team, and winning tonight made Saturday enormous. I can sense that there were times where the team was tight in the first half because they knew how important it was. And human nature is human nature, man. It doesn't matter if you've been playing college basketball for 4 and 5 years or whether you just got on the court a few weeks ago on the college level. They had a lot riding on the line. There was a lot being said about them, social media, which they can't block out as much as Hubert likes to think that they can. And the questions from the media and the questions to Hubert, he got beaten up because of some stuff. The way he responded to my question about Jalen Washington the other day, which was just to find out, where is Jalen basically in this whole process. He didn't play the bench again tonight. He rode the crew. He's going to ride. I don't think anything like that's going to change. It's going to come down to if this team has enough want, has enough care, and if they can make enough shots. And if they have the want and the care, they should defend better. If they have the want and the care, they should move a little bit more offensively. They should screen better, use screens better, and crash the offensive boards and score on possessions that they sometimes maybe miss a couple of shots. Mm-hmm. So that's what this team is right now. And they had to be that tonight to beat a team that's now 2-15 in the league.
Yeah.
But it's a lot better than losing to that team, because if they had lost tonight, they would have had to win out. It almost wouldn't. They had to win in Greensboro, and the ACC is so weird. Who knows who's going to win in Greensboro? It could be someone like Syracuse win that thing. You never know, or it could be someone like Carolina. Who the hell knows? But I don't know if they shoot well enough to win 4 straight days. But another good thing about winning tonight, just for the sake of discussion, with respect to the NCAA tournament, we got that out of the way. But also the ACC tournament, they don't want to play on Tuesday, and BC's charging. BC's playing better basketball, and if BC, if they were lost tonight, man, Carolina would be in danger of playing Tuesday in Greensboro. So now I think they're fairly secure playing Wednesday, which is not great. It's not, but it's better than the embarrassment of playing Tuesday. So I think that there's a little bit of relief getting this W. And I think that they should go into Virginia looser and confident that they can get a win because Virginia's not playing good basketball of late. Even in their wins, the Who's have not been very good. So they had to get a win and they got it, Brandon. That's what this means. So the importance of the Virginia game is significantly more so now because they didn't screw this thing up tonight.
Talking about whether the UNC will be playing on Tuesday or Wednesday of the ACC tournament here in late February was not something that I anticipated at the beginning of the season, but here we are,
Yeah.
But, AJ,
yeah, you're right. But they're on the bubble. I mean, the two most underachieving teams in the conference are on the court tonight. Notre Dame has its core back from a club that won a couple of games in the tournament last year.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame has been a total disaster this year. And it's wild to look out there and see some really good players not play well. I mean, Starling's a good freshman. Trey Wirtz, nice, solid role player, right? Leshevsky's been here since the Reagan administration. A pretty good player. He beat Carolina here during the Clinton administration with a jumper when I was on the baseline right over there a few years ago. Goodwin's a nice player. Ryan's a nice player. Bray's had some really good teams. I thought they were going to be a top 5 team in the league this year, and they may finish dead last. So in Carolina, they are the most disappointing team in the country, but they got to win tonight, Brandon.
Yeah.
So wins at this time of year are precious, and they're precious when you had lost 5 out of 6 and you were stressing out of the gills because when you're North Carolina and you're losing and it's February, it's not a very fun place to be because of how important it is to people. And these kids recognize that. So they were able to buy themselves a few more days. Yeah. And Saturday is the biggest game of the year.
Yeah, for sure. Well, AJ, I think that's a good place to stop. Again, North Carolina with a 63-59 win tonight over Notre Dame. Tar Heels will be back in action on Saturday, like AJ just mentioned, against Virginia in Chapel Hill. And we'll be there for your post-game coverage. And for Tar Heel Illustrated, I've been Brandon P. He's been Andrew Jones. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.